Cold War vs. Korean War. To what extent did the Cold War affect the relationship between the North and the South Korea, which eventually led to Korean War? The root cause of Korean War stemmed from Japan invading Korea in 1910 for 35 years. When Japan surrendered and left Korea, Soviet Union and the United States came and divided Korea into two. After Japan surrendered, there was a power vacuum over Korea. Therefore, during the Moscow-Yalta Conference, Soviet Union and United States decided to divide Korea into two. Soviet got in charge of the northern part of Korea, and United States got in charge of the southern part of Korea. United States and Soviet Union always had this tension between each other. These two countries were main powers that represented a totally different government system, which was capitalist and communist. US representing the capitalist, Soviet as the communist. This tension between the two powers has caused the Korean War to start. The Korean War, which was a type of proxy war for the Cold War, was a war between South Korea and North Korea of Soviet and United States. These two countries had no power to themselves at all at this time, and so when the United States and Soviet came in charge of them, they were totally brainwashed by their government system. Therefore, these two countries have started the war without realizing that they were in a proxy war mode between the two countries. Now, why proxy war in Korea? There was only two nations left in this world that had been divided into two countries which was East Germany and West Germany, and North Korea and South Korea. There had been a proxy war in Korea because Germany war was too complicated for them to enter, and yet America was pouring all of their attention towards the European countries. So in their perspective, it was not right for them to fight in this war. So both Soviet and United States chose to use Korea as their proxy war prop. Back to the story. Both part of Korea was influenced by these powers, and North Korea, which was strongly being influenced by Soviet, decided to invade South Korea and unify Korea as one. The purpose of North's invasion was to make the whole peninsula into one under the circumference of them being the leader and also be the communist. North Korea, at the dawn of June 25th, 1950, at 4 a.m. crossed the 30th parallel line. North Korea obliterated South Korea within a few days. There was a bombing and shooting everywhere. The weapons that North Korea had brought with them were so strong that South Korea couldn't do anything about it. There was no equipment in South Korea that was greater than the tank that North Korea brought with them. This was war like lion fighting with a cat. North Korea continued to push South Korea downwards and ended up on Busan, which meant that the victory was the North Korean. People who were in South Korea were terrified, and they tried their best to survive. There was only a little bit left of South Korea peninsula left until the North Korea could take over South Korea. South Korea desperately waited for help. After months of waiting, General MacArthur came to Korea with his troops. Earlier in the war, United States has declared that Korea is not in U.S. sphere influence. U.S. resisted to be part of Korean War because most of their attention was being poured at the European continents. U.S. was already busy with their job and didn't want to be responsible for too much territories. It surely is an irony that U.S. excluded South Korea from their list of Acheson Line, which is a territory that U.S. should be guarding and be responsible for, which again tells the characteristic of the country. However, as the time went by and U.S. started to see the seriousness of the war, they entered to make sure that South Korea and maybe even North Korea wouldn't be influenced by the communists. So United States entered the war. There was a policy called the containment policy in U.S. This policy was used to prevent communist power entering into non-communist countries. General MacArthur, the Supreme Commander of Pacific War, planned an ancient landing operation, and while he was planning, he put 25th Division to take care of Seoul. September 15 of 1950, MacArthur operated ancient landing operation, and South Korea was able to not only find their land back, but it was able to take over Ablok River in North Korea. Then China entered into the war supporting the communist power. Then UN sent countries like Canada, Australia, England, and more countries to support South Korea. This proxy war between communist power and capitalist power increased day by day. The fight carried on and seemed to never end. Finally, on 27th July 1953, the peace treaty was signed. The fight between North and South never ended. It had been 60 years now since the treaty was signed. Did the Cold War affect the Korean War? Cost the Korean War? Yes, to a great extent, Cold War affected the Korean War because North and was occupied by Soviet and adopted the communist mind, while South adopted the capitalist mind. Therefore, because of the Cold War, it brought North Korea and South into war action. Here's my internal citation, and thank you for listening.